Hey there, curious minds and history lovers. Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the most fascinating and spine-tingling mysteries from our past. Today, we're talking about something that will absolutely blow your mind. A book so mysterious, so enormous, and so steeped in legend that it's been called the eighth wonder of the world. We're exploring the Codex Gigas, better known as the Devil's Bible. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why this 800-year-old manuscript has captivated scholars, historians, and mystery enthusiasts for centuries. Now, before we jump into this incredible story, let me tell you why this particular book is so absolutely fascinating. Imagine a book so massive that it takes two grown adults to lift it. So detailed that experts believe it would take a single person working non-stop for 5 years just to copy the text. And so mysterious that legends claim it was written in a single night with the help of Satan himself. This isn't just any old book. This is a medieval masterpiece that contains secrets, curses, and one of the most haunting images of the devil ever created. Let's set the scene. We're talking about the early 13th century, somewhere between 1204 and 1230, in a small Benedictine monastery called Podlajice, in what was then Bohemia. That's modern-day Czech Republic for those keeping track. The world was a very different place back then. Medieval Europe was dominated by the Catholic Church. Monasteries were centers of learning and knowledge, and books were incredibly rare and precious commodities that had to be copied entirely by hand. Now, here's where our story gets really interesting. According to legend, and I want to emphasize that this is legend because the truth is actually quite different, there was a monk named Herman the Recluse, sometimes called Hermanus Inclusus in Latin. Herman had apparently committed some terrible sins that violated his monastic vows. We're talking about serious stuff here, the kind of transgressions that in medieval times could get you sentenced to death. Some versions of the story suggest he broke his vow of chastity. Others hint at even darker crimes. The punishment? He was going to be walled up alive and left to starve. A horrifying form of execution called immurement. But Herman was clever and he was desperate. As they were about to seal his fate, he made an incredible bargain with the abbot. He promised to create a book that would contain all of human knowledge and bring eternal glory to the monastery. Not just any book, mind you, but the most comprehensive, most beautiful, most complete manuscript ever created. The catch? He had to finish it in a single night. One night to write what should take decades. Impossible, right? Well, according to the legend, as midnight approached and Herman realized he could never complete this monumental task alone, he did what any desperate medieval monk might do. He prayed for help. But when no divine assistance came, he turned to a much darker source. Herman allegedly made a deal with the devil himself. In exchange for his eternal soul, Satan would help him complete the manuscript before dawn. The devil agreed, and by morning, the impossible had been accomplished. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really fascinating from a historical perspective. While the legend is almost certainly fiction, the reality is in some ways even more incredible. Modern handwriting analysis has confirmed something remarkable. The entire Codex Gigas was indeed written by a single person. The consistency of the script, the uniformity of the ink, the style of illumination, it all points to one incredibly dedicated individual working alone on this massive project. Let's talk about just how massive we're talking here. The Codex Gigas measures 92 centimeters tall by 50 centimeters wide. That's about 36 inches by 20 inches for those using imperial measurements. It's 22 centimeters thick and weighs a staggering 75 kilograms, or about 165 pounds. To put that in perspective, it's larger than most coffee tables and heavier than most people can lift alone. This isn't a book you casually flip through. It's a monument to human dedication and craftsmanship. The manuscript contains 310 surviving pages, though originally it had 320. Those pages are made from vellum, that's specially prepared animal skin, likely from about 160 donkeys or calves. Each page had to be carefully prepared, cut to size, and treated to create the perfect writing surface. The ink was mixed by hand, the quills were carefully prepared, and every single letter was painstakingly formed by the scribe's hand. Now, let me tell you about Benedictine monks and what made them different from other religious orders of the time. The Benedictines followed the rule of Saint Benedict, written way back in the 6th century. This rule emphasized 3 main vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience. But what really set Benedictine monasteries apart was their focus on ora et labora, pray and work. These monks believed that manual labor was a form of prayer, and much of that labor involved copying and preserving manuscripts. Unlike some other monastic orders that focused primarily on contemplation or preaching, Benedictine monks were the librarians and scholars of medieval Europe. They spent hours each day in scriptoriums, specialized rooms designed for copying manuscripts, hunched over desks carefully reproducing texts by candlelight or natural light from windows. They were incredibly disciplined, working in silence, taking breaks only for prayer and meals. A typical monk might copy just 2 to 3 pages per day, which gives you an idea of just how monumental Herman's alleged overnight accomplishment would have been. But here's what's really remarkable about our mysterious monk Herman the Recluse. Experts estimate that creating the Codex Gigas would have taken a single scribe working continuously for about 25 to 30 years. That's 3 hours a day, every day, for nearly 3 decades. And yet, the handwriting shows no signs of aging, no deterioration in skill or consistency that you'd expect to see over such a long period. It's almost as if the entire manuscript was completed in a much shorter time frame, which is part of what gives the legend its enduring power. So who was Herman the Recluse? Here's the honest truth. We don't really know much about him beyond his name, which appears in the manuscript as Hermanus Monachus Inclusus. The word inclusus might mean he was a recluse who preferred solitary work, or it could indicate that he was indeed confined or imprisoned. No other works have been attributed to him, and we have no record of where he trained or learned his remarkable skills. He appears in history only as the creator of this one incredible manuscript, and then vanishes back into the mists of time. Now let's talk about what's actually inside this massive book, because the contents are just as fascinating as the creation story. The Codex Gigas isn't just a Bible, it's more like a medieval encyclopedia, a complete library bound into a single volume. It starts with the Old Testament, written in Latin using the Vulgate translation that was standard at the time. But this isn't your typical medieval Bible. Between the Old and New Testaments, Herman included several other major works that were considered essential knowledge in the 13th century. There's Flavius Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews and the Jewish War, crucial historical texts that provided medieval Christians with background about the biblical world. There's also Isidore of Seville's Etymologiae, which was basically a 7th century encyclopedia covering everything from theology to medicine to natural history. The manuscript also includes The Chronicle of Bohemia by Cosmas of Prague, the first comprehensive history of the Bohemian people. This is particularly important because it gives us insights into the local culture and politics of Herman's time and place. There are medical texts too, including works attributed to Hippocrates and other ancient physicians, making this not just a religious text, but a practical handbook for medieval life. But perhaps the most intriguing sections are the shorter texts scattered throughout. There's a calendar marking important saints' days and Bohemian feast days. There are magic formulas and spells for curing illnesses. There are detailed instructions for performing exorcisms, methods for driving out evil spirits that were considered very real threats in medieval times. Some scholars find it ironic that a book supposedly created with the devil's help would contain instructions for fighting demons, but others see this as evidence that the manuscript was actually intended as a tool for combating evil, not promoting it. And then we come to the missing pages. 10 pages that were deliberately cut out of the manuscript at some point in its history. Based on careful analysis of the binding and page structure, experts believe these pages originally contained the Rule of Saint Benedict, the foundational document that governed monastic life. Why would someone remove these pages? Some scholars think they might have contained sensitive information about the monastery's practices or politics, but others believe something much more sinister. Legend suggests these missing pages contained the devil's prayer, an apocalyptic text so dangerous that it had to be removed to prevent the end of the world. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the devil on the page. On page 577 of the Codex Gigas, there's a full-page illustration that has terrified and fascinated people for 800 years. It shows a massive, grotesque figure of Satan himself, depicted in vivid detail that was shocking for medieval religious art. The devil in this image isn't the subtle tempter of later artistic traditions. This is a monstrous, threatening creature with a green face, bulging eyes, red horns, and two forked tongues hanging from its mouth. The figure is shown in a crouching position with clawed hands raised, wearing what appears to be an ermine loincloth, a fabric reserved for royalty, which scholars interpret as acknowledgement of Satan's status as the Prince of Darkness. The detail is incredible and disturbing. You can see every scale, every claw, every horrifying feature rendered with the same careful precision as the religious texts surrounding it. What makes this image even more remarkable is its placement in the manuscript. Directly opposite the devil on the facing page, there's an equally detailed illustration of the heavenly city, a beautiful golden representation of paradise, complete with towers, gates, and celestial glory. The contrast is stark and deliberate, showing the eternal struggle between good and evil, heaven and hell, salvation and damnation. Here's something really interesting that most people don't know. These two pages are noticeably more worn and discolored than the rest of the manuscript. Why? Because for centuries, people couldn't resist opening the book to this exact spread. The fascination with the devil's portrait has been so intense that the vellum has actually been damaged by light exposure and handling over the centuries. Even today, when the manuscript is carefully preserved in climate-controlled conditions, these are the pages that capture everyone's attention. The Codex Gigas has had quite a journey over the past 800 years, and that journey is filled with stories of war, fire, and possibly even supernatural events. Originally created at the small Podlazhits monastery, the book was so valuable that it was eventually pawned to settle the monastery's debts. It moved between different religious institutions before catching the attention of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II in 1594. Rudolf was a fascinating character in his own right, a collector of curiosities, an amateur alchemist, and someone deeply interested in the occult. When he borrowed the Codex Gigas from the monastery, he had no intention of ever returning it. The manuscript became part of his vast collection of strange and supernatural objects in Prague Castle, where it remained until the 30 Years' War changed everything. In 1648, Swedish forces stormed Prague and carried off massive amounts of treasure as war booty. The Codex Gigas was among the prizes taken back to Stockholm, where it became part of Queen Christina's royal library. But the manuscript's adventures weren't over yet. On May 7, 1697, a devastating fire broke out in Stockholm's royal castle. As flames engulfed the building, librarians desperately tried to save the most valuable books and manuscripts. According to eyewitness accounts, someone threw the Codex Gigas out of a library window to save it from the flames. The massive book reportedly injured a bystander when it landed. Imagine being knocked out by a flying devil's Bible. But the manuscript survived, though some pages were damaged and scattered. Since 1878, the Codex Gigas has been housed in Sweden's National Library, where it remains today. It's displayed in a specially designed climate-controlled case that protects it from light and environmental damage. The book is kept closed most of the time to preserve the binding, but visitors can view digital displays showing the famous devil portrait and other significant pages. Now, let's talk about something that sends shivers down the spine of many who encounter this manuscript: the persistent legends of a curse. From the very beginning, people have reported strange events connected to the Codex Gigas. The original monastery that pawned it fell into financial ruin shortly afterward. Emperor Rudolf II, who was obsessed with the manuscript, gradually descended into madness and was eventually overthrown by his own family. The Swedish castle where it was stored burned down. Even today, some librarians and scholars report feeling uneasy when working with the manuscript. But is the book actually cursed? Well, from a rational perspective, most of these events can be explained by historical circumstances. Medieval monasteries often struggled financially. Rudolf II was already mentally unstable due to inbreeding in the Habsburg family line. Castle fires were unfortunately common in an era of open flames and wooden buildings. And yet, the pattern of misfortune following the manuscript is striking enough that even skeptics sometimes wonder. Some modern researchers have reported strange dreams after spending time studying the manuscript. Others describe feeling watched or experiencing sudden temperature changes in the library's rare books room. Security cameras have occasionally captured unexplained movements near the display case, though these could easily be explained by building settling, air currents, or equipment malfunctions. What's particularly interesting is how the legend has evolved over time. In recent decades, stories have emerged of librarians hearing whispers in unknown languages, of visitors fainting when viewing the devil's portrait, and of electronic equipment malfunctioning near the manuscript. Whether these stories have any basis in reality, or are simply the product of overactive imaginations influenced by centuries of legend, is something each person has to decide for themselves. The scientific analysis of the Codex Gigas continues to yield fascinating discoveries. Advanced imaging techniques have revealed corrections and additions that weren't visible to earlier scholars. Chemical analysis of the inks has provided insights into medieval manuscript production techniques. Digital preservation efforts have made the entire manuscript accessible to researchers worldwide, allowing for unprecedented collaborative study. One of the most intriguing recent discoveries involves the consistency of the handwriting. Using computer analysis, researchers have confirmed that not only was the manuscript written by a single person, but the writing shows remarkably little variation from beginning to end. This suggests that either Herman worked incredibly quickly, or he had some method for maintaining absolute consistency over what should have been decades of work. It's findings like these that keep the legend alive even in our scientific age. The Codex Gigas also provides a fascinating window into medieval knowledge and beliefs. The medical texts reveal what people thought caused diseases and how to treat them, a mixture of rational observation and supernatural explanation that characterized medieval medicine. The magical formulas show how Christianity coexisted with much older folk beliefs about spirits, curses, and protective charms. The exorcism instructions are particularly detailed, describing step-by-step procedures for identifying and expelling demons. These weren't abstract theological exercises. They were practical guides for dealing with what medieval people believed were very real supernatural threats. Reading these sections gives us insight into a worldview where the line between the physical and spiritual realms was much thinner than it is in our modern secular society. Today, the Codex Gigas continues to attract visitors from around the world. The National Library of Sweden reports that it's one of their most popular attractions, with people traveling specifically to see the Devil's Bible. Many visitors report feeling a sense of awe when confronted with the sheer size and age of the manuscript. Others describe more unsettling reactions, a feeling of unease, unexpected emotional responses, or simply the sense that they're in the presence of something genuinely mysterious. The manuscript has also inspired countless works of fiction, documentaries, and scholarly studies. It appears in novels about medieval mysteries, serves as the centerpiece of television shows about supernatural phenomena, and continues to be the subject of serious academic research. The legend of Herman the Recluse and his deal with the devil has become a classic tale of human ambition and the price of knowledge. But perhaps what's most remarkable about the Codex Gigas is how it challenges our modern assumptions about the past. We tend to think of medieval people as superstitious and primitive, but this manuscript reveals incredible sophistication in terms of organization, artistic skill, and intellectual ambition. Herman the Recluse, whoever he was, created something that still impresses us 800 years later. A complete library, an artistic masterpiece, and a mystery that continues to captivate our imagination. Whether you believe in the supernatural aspects of the story or prefer the rational explanations offered by modern scholarship, there's no denying that the Codex Gigas is one of the most remarkable manuscripts ever created. It represents the pinnacle of medieval book production, a testament to human dedication and skill, and a window into a world where knowledge was precious, art was sacred, and the line between reality and legend was beautifully, mysteriously blurred. The Devil's Bible reminds us that some mysteries are worth preserving, that not everything needs to be fully explained to be appreciated, and that sometimes the most powerful truths come wrapped in legend and uncertainty. In our age of instant information and scientific explanation, there's something deeply appealing about a story that maintains its mystery, that keeps us wondering, and that reminds us of the power of human imagination and dedication. So there you have it, folks, the incredible story of the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, a manuscript that continues to bridge the gap between medieval mystery and modern wonder. Whether Herman the Recluse was a brilliant scholar working alone for decades, or a desperate monk who made a deal with darkness, his creation stands as one of history's most fascinating artifacts. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into one of the world's most mysterious manuscripts. There are so many more incredible stories from history just waiting to be explored, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you found this fascinating, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest adventures into the strange, the mysterious, and the absolutely mind-blowing corners of human history. What do you think? Was the Codex Gigas really created with supernatural help? Or is it simply the incredible achievement of one dedicated medieval monk? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your minds open to the mysteries that surround us every day. Thanks for watching.